gender, ethnicity, religious, or any other affiliation. And I hope that in this room we will have some other task force as well about the Middle East, and we will see them as cool as Georgia, advancing in their development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for joining us. We've unfortunately hit the clock, but I want to try to just quickly pick up a couple of points. I caught Kurt Volker, and I've got a question from the back as well. So, Kurt, please.
Maybe I'll just
I'm just asking folks to try to be as tight as possible so that we can actually not keep you too much over.
Understood, and so I will be quick. But I wanted to make one point which builds on the ambassador's point here. We've heard a lot of the details of the report from the agreement and grant, but the broader point that I wanted to make, there are a lot of ways to look at European history over a long period of time. You can look at it as the rise and the clash and the decline of empires. You can look at it as the integration of France and Germany overcoming decades of conflict or centuries of conflict in Europe. But I think the most meaningful way to look at European history is to look at the progress of the idea of governance, which is what the ambassador was talking about, the relationship of people to the governments that rule over them, whether it was the initial imposition of governance by might, or then the assertion of divine right of monarchies to rule over others, to finally the assertion that the people have the right to choose the governments that rule over them, and to then found societies that are based on freedom, democracy, market economy, rule of law, and human rights. If you look at that broad sweep of European history, there has been tremendous progress over centuries and more recently over decades. And we've seen this with Western Europe, the Magna Carta, the French Revolution, influence on the US Revolution, the French philosophers. You take the aftermath of World War II and the establishment of democratic institutions in Italy and Germany, the fall of the Berlin Wall. And what Georgia reminds us, and also the Balkans and also Ukraine, what we're talking about Georgia today, is that as much progress as we've made in seeing this sweep of history, we've never finished the job. There are parts of Europe that have not fully become part of that development and human progression that still need to reach there. For those of us who can take pride and satisfaction in how far we've come, we mustn't ever forget that we have this much that lies before us. So that's what this report is really, I think, getting at, is that the job is still ahead. Georgia's made tremendous progress. It's not perfect, none of us are perfect. It has work to do. But we shouldn't rest on our laurels and look backward at what has been done and feel now that things are too hard. We have to keep looking forward at Georgia, Ukraine, and Russia itself, and say our mission in establishing this better form of governance for people is still not complete. Thank you.
Very much captured the philosophy that you brought all the task force members together. We pick up, given our time, what I'd like to do is just take the last few comments and we'll wrap up with that. So the gentleman in the back, if you have Tori and Ken as well, if you would like.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shaheen. I'm a former CEO of the Millennium Challenge in Georgia. I wanted to thank you once again, the Planning Council, for inviting us for this event, and I wanted to thank the bipartisan support to Georgia that we have experienced throughout the last few years, and its continued support to get Georgia to the next stage of development. I wanted to also thank the European community representatives here looking at Georgia, considering Georgia, and thinking how far we can support Georgia. I wanted to mention a couple of moments from my personal experience in Georgia.
And if you could do so briefly, please, I appreciate that.
I just wanted to see your report. I just want to underline what senators here mentioned. One, it was mentioned that Georgia should be people of Georgia and not any individual in Georgia that US or European Union should be supporting. That's one. I just give a platform to my next topic. And two, another senator that mentioned that Georgia has to formulate and show the right model to its own breakaway regions in the face of South Ossetia and Abkhazia to show that we are protecting human rights. We are guaranteeing the rule of law, and we are a democracy. We're building a true democracy in Georgia. So now these two topics are obviously important topics for democracy, and it's well pointed out in your report when you say only 6% of Georgian population believes in the court system in Georgia today. even though U.S. and European Union is fully supporting Georgia, and I have no doubt they will probably continue, we have to underline as much as possible rule of law and freedom, human rights, and rule of law in Georgia in order for Georgia to really be able to be a partner in the future.
Thank you.
And switch from individual rulership to countries democratic rule.
Thank you very much. Director, please, and then we'll close with Ken, just if you could do so briefly.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Jeanne for your reference you made. True, I represent the European Parliament here, but I spent 2 years of my life assisting and advising the Georgian Parliament in DC. And let me make just an observation which I had from those years, it was 5, 6 years ago. There were actions on both American side and on EU side. The problem was that these actions were absolutely parallel, but they were not joint actions. I am full of admiration for your report, and my question is whether you see already, because I couldn't find it, some proposals regarding joint actions. Because also from the perspective of Georgians, it's important if they know that it's not that in room A, Americans are active, in room B, Europeans are active. Even more important, Russia was mentioned here. It's even more important for Russians to know that we make one team here, and we cannot be played over one against the other one, which is very often the case. To finish, I would say, Georgia case is a perfect case from my nowadays perspective when I seek all joint possibilities on working on transatlantic acts, on joint issues. Georgia is a fantastic example. That's the place where both and together and jointly, US and EU can and should work. Do you have any proposals?
Thank you, Peter. Let me pick up Ken and then we'll close that, please. Ken Wong.
Maybe I'll sit there. I like to look eye to eye rather than. First of all, I just wanted to, as a task force member, I wanted to thank the leadership team of Senators Shaheen and Graham and Damon and Fran and Cindy for all of their work. I just wanted to add a couple points to Ambassador Volker's eloquent remarks a few minutes ago. I think what is interesting about this report is that it brings a group of people together based on some fundamental principles. First, I think all of us considered ourselves friends of Georgia. Secondly, I think we all agree that Georgia deserved greater international attention as it struggles with a number of very, very important challenges. And third, this notion of the interconnectedness between security, development, and democracy, and how we see these things, the linkages and how these things merge. I think the report focuses on deepening democracy, and rightfully so. And I believe members of the task force, as I said, all friends of Georgia, would certainly view the trajectory of democracy in the country on a more positive track than most of Lindsey's neighbors. Nevertheless, the Georgian people hold its country to higher standards. And so therefore, the international community also holds Georgia to those standards as well. And a deep-seated belief on the part of all of us that the democratic progress in Georgia is the best guarantor of security and European integration. And that, I think, reflects the hopes and aspirations of the Georgian people. NDI's most recent survey, we have worked in Georgia for nearly 20 years. And I think the report also reflects the views of the Georgian people. In our most recent survey, I think a vast majority of the Georgian people see Georgia as a democracy or progressing down a democratic path. But at the same time, an overwhelming majority believe that democracy has to deepen in the country. And I think the report in that regard outlines a number of important areas where we can respond to the initiatives being taken on the ground and in the hope and the expectation that progress will continue. And that will be good not only for the Georgian people, but Georgia's relationship with Europe and the United States and the global community.
Thank you very much, Ken. We benefited just tremendously from having folks like Ken Wall and Professor Kurt Volker on the task force. Let me ask Fran to close with an answer to Piotr's question, and then thank the audience for your indulgence for letting us run slightly over.
Thanks very much. Thanks, David. And thanks, Piotr, for that right on target set of remarks, because you do see in situations like this parallel US and European efforts that don't connect, or that sometimes actually contradict each other. And I would say that one place where we do have some deconflicting to do is the idea of a US-Georgia FTA and an EU deep and comprehensive free trade agreement of the type currently being talked about. Because this sets up different regulatory structures that no country, let alone a country with somewhat limited administrative capacity, could handle. So we need to have a conversation about how do we integrate Georgia economically into the West in a way that it remains open to American economics, trade and investment as well. But I think the important thing about the report is that we hope it provides a message and a set of projects, whether it is more civil society support, more support for civil society organizations, more support for democracy building, that officials in the US and Europe can then talk with their Georgian colleagues about what would be the best way forward together. I think the most important thing is the messaging, the rhetoric. It's not just rhetoric. It's very important that not only Georgians, but Russians, and also our own constituents here in the United States and in Europe understand that we are all on the same page. And I hope that the process that we went through in the task force has ended up with a report where the language and the ambitions are something that both US and European leaders can buy into and use as a basis for identifying some really specific core things that they can do together to help Georgia move forward with Georgians.
Thank you very much, Fran. As you see, the task force believes the job of completing Europe is not yet done. Georgia is earning a place in that great project. And our policy, Western policy, needs to embrace that vision and back it up with real policy. So thank you for coming today. We've tried to make our contribution to this debate and appreciate your sharing the morning with us on this. Thank you very much.